Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Ladies, no, there's no gentlemen in here except these guys here and the one passing out the handouts. And maybe there's a few others. We always welcome the men to come and see what the ladies are going to learn. So my name is Catherine Champagne. If you're from the Lafayette area, it's Catherine Champagne. And I have been here at the Pennington Center. I'm in my 30th year. I started when I was 10. I wish. Anyway, I'm going to be giving you, I am from St. Martinville, Louisiana. I have a PhD in nutrition. I'm a registered dietitian, and I am going to give the first talk today. But I want to sort of give you pretty much the plan for the day. You have a two-sided handout in your folder as your main reference. It includes the event schedule and tells you when and where to find the exhibitors, screenings, and sessions. At least that was yesterday. There's a floor plan map near the middle of every level, identifying where the exhibitors, screenings, and sessions are located. And before you leave, and preferably after the last presentation, we ask you to stay and complete the evaluation for us. It is the blue sheet in your folder. I also always encourage you to visit our sponsors. Our sponsors on the screen listed here, and you'll see them several times displayed. We want you to visit their businesses and at least thank them throughout the year so that they'll keep on coming. So that was supposed to take 10 minutes, and it hasn't taken much of 10 minutes. But anyway, let me preface why I am speaking to you on myths versus science in nutrition. So last year, you might remember we had a speaker who was a chef. Her name was Feel Good Mama. Any of you remember that last year? Okay, well, she gave a session at the end, and there were a lot of questions that were asked about certain things that people hear about, you know, routinely in the news, on TV, or maybe on the internet. The internet could be your friend or your foe, depending upon what you're looking at. But anyway, I thought there were a lot of questions that I felt really set a stage for what I wanted to talk about today. And my concern is that there's a lot of misbeliefs going around. There's a lot of people that think this is good or this is not good. And so I wanted to present some data on really what we know. And I think I want you to leave here knowing that in order for something to be really believable, it has to have a good bit of science to back it up. So that is the main thing that I am going to be talking about today. I don't want to start too early because some people have not yet come. So again, let me present the slide on our speakers, on our sponsors, and encourage you again to visit them. The objectives that I have for today are to discuss current beliefs and fads in diet and nutrition and whether there is evidence to support them. I also want to talk about healthy diets because we've done a lot of work here at Pennington on healthy diets, And I think you already know about the DASH diet. I believe that there was a pamphlet passed around about the DASH diet. There are more in the front on the stage down here. And if you didn't get one, you're welcome to get one at the end. I want to describe these diets because they're both both low-fat and high-fat diets that are predominant today, and as well as several issues of public health concern for people, and they're listed here. So last year, there was, Feel Good Mama had a table, and she had some stuff about packing a healthy school lunch for your children or your grandchildren, because many of you have both children and grandchildren. And and I told her that I did, and I still do. I am working a lot with school lunch, with child nutrition programs in the state of Louisiana. And I told her that school lunch provided by USDA was a good choice. And she said, well, we can agree to disagree. So I want to just give you some information about school lunch, because school lunch is a good choice for your children, and it's backed up by science. School lunch, USDA school lunches include fresh fruits and vegetables, whole grains, zero trans fat content. They often have salads and salad bars, even in kindergarten in some areas. They provide low-fat dairy. The items are baked rather than fried. You don't see very many fryers anymore in these major lunchrooms. And they use healthy cooking and preparation techniques. So the benefits of school lunch are that children who participate in school lunch typically have superior nutritional intakes compared to those who do not participate. Eating lunch at school correlates with higher test scores and less absenteeism. These are the nutrition standards for school lunch, and actually the Department of Education Nutrition Support actually audits every single school every 3 years, or maybe not the school, but the whole organization that provides it, like East Baton Rouge Parish, for instance. And you know, we have to certify that the menus that are given to school children actually have all of these components on a weekly or monthly basis, a weekly or daily basis. You'll notice here that that, for instance, they have to have a half a cup of fruit. They have to have 3/4 of a cup of vegetables on a daily basis, but then on a weekly basis, they have a target as well. And in addition, they have to have certain types of vegetables, so they can't have green beans every day. They have to have those vegetables that provide some carotenoids and some good benefits for children. So the scoop on, and this comes from some valid research from the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics and from the Journal of Nutrition Education and Behavior. So most school lunches are composed of sandwiches, 59%, snack foods, fruit. You see desserts, water, and sugar-sweetened sugar-sweetened beverages. So and I have 2 sons, and when they were in school, they didn't want to eat school lunch, so I would pack them a lunch in a sack lunch, and it was a challenge to make it diverse every day. So that's one of the problems. One of the problems about packed lunches is that only 27% in some studies of these lunches actually met 3 of 5 National Nutrition Lunch Program standards. only 4% of snacks met standards of child and adult food care programs, and lunches packed at home are generally not as nutritious as school lunch based on the data that I showed you before. Okay, so I'm going to get off my bandwagon on school lunch and I'm going to go to healthy diets. So lots of times, you think about going on a diet and, are you going to count the calories? Are you going to look at how much calcium, how much fat you're going to have? Are you going to count your carbs? You're going to count your fat grams? An emphasis on healthy eating patterns is probably more important than focusing on nutrients. So is that a myth or is that science? Well, it's actually science. And we have done work here at Pennington to actually talk about or to discuss healthy diets. So the controversy really lies in whether do you want to look at nutrients or food groups. You're familiar with the pyramid, the plate, the my plate, dietary patterns. What's really the evidence behind it? And I think it's really one of ease. The three categories of interest for most people are really what is an overall healthy diet. You will see that the Mediterranean diet and the DASH diet and the flexitarian diet, which I'm going to mention a little bit later, are the three most healthiest diets. They are all based, all of these three diets are based on dietary patterns. For weight loss, Weight Watchers is one of the popular ones, Volumetrics and Jenny Craig. And Weight Watchers, you're counting points, so you're really spending a lot of time looking at what you're going to eat, because you're going to work on making sure that you have a certain number of points or whatever. The Weight Watchers is now called WW. Why? I don't know why they changed it, but whatever. I think they just didn't want to focus on the weight part of it. And then for diabetes, the Mediterranean diet is seemingly number one, with the DASH and flexitarian diets tied at number two. And those diets, again, the overall and the diabetes ones are all dietary patterns that are being encouraged. It's easier to follow a pattern than to follow strict rules. So for many years, 8 years, the DASH diet was number one. Last year, it was tied with the Mediterranean diet for number one, and then now it's in the number two spot, mainly because people want a little bit more fat in their diet, and actually the DASH diet does limit fat. So, it limits sodium. The emphasis is on fruits, vegetables, low-fat dairy, and whole grains. And really, it was a diet that was designed to treat and prevent high blood pressure. And actually, I finalized those diets for that feeding study, which involved 4 centers in the United States. It's one of my claims to fame. So the DASH diet it's good, it's heart healthy, it follows USDA dietary guidelines, it's easy to follow, and it's really nutritionally sound. No food is really eliminated in that diet, but there's lots of grunt work. It can be somewhat pricey. I encourage you to go to look at foods that are in season and try to get foods that are in season at a lower cost. And over the year, you will probably not spend as much money on that. What makes it top notch? It can help and prevent high blood pressure. Thus, we reduce the risk for heart disease and stroke. And it can be a diet for weight loss. It wasn't developed that way, but if you count calories, and in many other studies that we've done here, we find that knowing your calorie intake is one way to succeed with losing weight or maintaining a healthy weight. The DASH diet actually also promotes it's lots of fruits and vegetables, so it could help prevent cancer, and it's been chosen to have a lot of benefits. The Mediterranean diet is very much like the DASH diet in that it's focusing on fruits and vegetables, low in red meat intake and in saturated fat, but the focus of the Mediterranean diet is that it is high in fat, but healthy fat. So nuts, fish, olive oil, and the aim is that it is heart healthy as well. So it's nutritionally sound, heart healthy, has diverse foods and flavors, much like the DASH diet. It's not a structured diet. It's lots of grunt work and what we did a study many years ago comparing a low-fat diet to a Mediterranean diet, and what we found was with all the media messages about fat being bad, people were actually afraid to add that much olive oil to their diet. So we never really achieved the level of fat that is unique to the Mediterranean diet. It's almost 40% of calories from fat, so it's a lot of fat. What makes it top-notch is that it may include weight loss, but again, you have to count your calories because fat does have a lot more calories. Heart and brain health, cancer prevention, diabetes prevention and control, very much like the DASH diet as well. But healthy fats in moderation have been shown to reduce bad cholesterol. And actually, that's one of the problems with a very low-fat diet, is that it tends to maybe not it will elevate your triglycerides, for instance, and it may have less of an impact on your good cholesterol. So the bottom line is the evidence that we have today seems to be overwhelmingly in support of dietary patterns, and people can find more ease in following a dietary pattern approach. So this is this particular DASH diet for hypertension was actually, you can probably find it on Amazon. The author is Tom Moore, and he was one of the actual DASH investigators. He was in, I believe he was in the Boston area. But there are a lot of DASH diets out there, and none of those people were associated with DASH, just so you know. But there are a lot of people who have, a lot of dietitians, a lot of authors who have taken the DASH message and created cookbooks. The Mediterranean diet, there are several Mediterranean diets out there. The flexitarian diet is an interesting one because it's for people who want to be vegetarian, but every once in a while they got an urge for a big hamburger or a steak, and they just got to have it. So, but actually, that's a good thing in some respects because, you want to not necessarily exclude things from your diet. Of course, now, I'm not saying that you have to eat meat, but if you want to eat meat, this is an option for a diet for you. So there's a lot of interest in the ketogenic diet. So this statement, there is no evidence that a ketogenic diet is useful, and it's not recommended by the American Diabetes Association. And actually, that's really kind of a myth because, the controversy seems to surround carbs or fat. Are you looking at your usual carb intake, a high carb intake, a moderate carb intake, low carbs, very low carbs, or ketogenic, which is almost no carbs? And actually, the standards for of medical care for diabetes show some modest benefits of a low carb or a ketogenic diet that's less than 50 grams of carbohydrate a day. And this approach might be good on the short term, 3 to 4 months. There's no reason to not try it if you are so inclined. But I think there is very little long-term research citing whether there is actual benefits from the ketogenic diet or potentially some harm. And I think maybe your body is one of the best messengers of whether it's working for you or not. So the ketogenic diet in general is challenging to maintain on the long term. I think, you remember the Sugar Busters diet way back a long time ago? Well, one time some reporters came to talk to me, and for a TV spot on the Sugar Busters diet, which it's a low carb diet, but maybe not as strict as the ketogenic diet. And so they had a guy who was following the Sugar Busters diet, and it was great, it was wonderful, and he was losing weight, and that's all well and good. And they asked me what I thought about it. And so, I said that, well, I spent a long time, and they maybe took 2 minutes of what I said, not even 2 minutes, 30 seconds of what I said, where, I said that wasn't a good, you were excluding food groups, it's not necessarily a good thing to do, and that maybe you should take, you might have to take some vitamins. And so the only thing that they actually put in the thing was the vitamins. It's great, the guy says it's great, I said take a vitamin. So they didn't say that this woman said it wasn't a good diet. But I did ask the reporter, I said, so this person doesn't eat anything other than this diet? Well, upon occasion, he likes a big bowl of ice cream. So that wasn't exactly part of the Sugar Busters diet. So my point being that if you're going to maintain a ketogenic diet on a long term, you're not going to see much bread, you're not going to see much pasta, you're not going to see any dessert. I don't know that it's sustainable on the long time, and that's really the concern. And most data shows that it has generally only followed for a year or less because you're eliminating entire food groups. There may be quick loss, but there's really some concern about whether that weight loss and maintenance can be sustained on the long term. Also, there's the potential abnormal lipid values, because if you have heart disease in your family and you're consuming a very high-fat diet, I would worry about whether you are what your lipid panel is going to look like. So you would need to actually look at that for a long time. And then, the question of exercise, if you're exercising, what gives you energy to exercise is carbs. They're the most efficient. So no carbs or low carbs, I don't know how well you're going to be able to sustain your exercise program. And so the long-term consequences really need a lot more research. So this was something that came up last year. The concern about saturated fat, coconut oil. So we should avoid animal saturated fats, but saturated fats from plants, particularly coconut oil, is okay. That's a myth. The controversy is we need to look at where the fat is coming from, how much is too much, and are there differences in types of saturated fat. When you look at where people can get their most saturated fat from, you'll see that mixed dishes is probably about 35% of the saturated fat intake in the population, coming from pizza, burgers, meat and poultry, seafood dishes, mixtures of dishes, some from protein foods, and dairy is a very high source of saturated fat as well. Sweets and snacks. So what about coconut oil? Coconut oil is 82.5% saturated fatty acids. Is it a healthy cooking oil? Well, one thing you can see here is that it's not a cheap cooking oil. If you look at this one, and on the this one is $8.99 for 11 ounces. That's pretty high. This one is $10.99 for 11 ounces, for 16 ounces. And the last one here is $31 for 54 ounces. So it's definitely not cheap. It's probably good to spread it on your body. So 72% of Americans think that this is a healthy fat, compared to 37% of nutritionists. And I'd like to meet the 37% of nutritionists that think that it's healthy. It's really attributed to a lot of marketing. It's well marketed in the popular press. You know, people are actually looking for some magic thing that will make their life better. And so somebody said, oh, coconut oil is the key. Well, in a systematic review, 7 trials comparing coconut oil with monounsaturated or polyunsaturated fats, in all 7 trials, coconut oil elevated your bad cholesterol, your LDL cholesterol. If you have heart disease in your family, you do not want to be cooking with coconut oil. It was significant in 6 of the 7. It raised it in all 7, but it was highly significant in 6 out of the 7. And there was no difference in the LDL cholesterol raising effect between coconut oil and all other high saturated fats, butter, beef fat, palm oil, palm kernel oil. Because coconut oil increases your bad cholesterol, there's no, and it doesn't have anything positive to go along with it. The American Heart Association has advised against the use of cholesterol. And so where does coconut oil get its popularity? Well, people think it is a medium chain triglyceride. And medium chain triglycerides are man-made medium chain as opposed to long chain triglycerides. And really, people are equating coconut oil with the benefits that are seen with medium chain triglycerides. And actually, it does not have the same effects because it contains primarily lauric acid rather than caprylic or capric acid, and it does not have 100% medium chain triglycerides. Basically, it acts more like a long chain fatty acid instead of a medium chain. And heart health claims have really not been substantiated. Brain health, the evidence is mostly word of mouth. People, might say they feel better, but there's no data from scientific studies to back that up. So the bottom line on saturated fats is that saturated and animal fats are associated with the highest risk of developing diabetes. Saturated fat and animal fat, including coconut oil, negatively affect your lipid profile. Oops. And overall, the evidence from intervention studies to date suggests that if you replace coconut oil with an unsaturated fat, you will help to decrease your blood lipids. So take that coconut oil and throw it in the trash can. Get you some canola oil, some olive oil, something that is better for you to consume. Take that coconut oil out of the trash can and rub it all over your body, because maybe that would be better. Or your hair. See, I can't put it in my hair because my hair's already bad. So another thing that people are often asking me about is dairy. So a lot of people think that dairy should be avoided, or if you eat it, only non-fat varieties. Well, that's a myth too. So do we need dairy? Does dairy help or dairy harm? What's the evidence? You know, you see articles in the popular magazines like yogurt may lower your diabetes risk, why full-fat dairy may be healthier than low-fat, should you start drinking whole milk? So how many of you think you don't know what kind of milk to drink? So maybe you quit drinking milk. I love milk. And actually, milk is really one of the hallmarks of the DASH diet. We actually saw a lowering of blood pressure significant to blood pressure medications just by including dairy along with those high content of fruits and vegetables. So total dairy intake has been associated with a lower incidence of diabetes in prospective studies. Yogurt, cheese, and low-fat dairy have also been associated with a lower incidence of diabetes in prospective studies and have shown benefits on blood pressure like in the DASH diet. High-fat dairy was not associated with diabetes in prospective studies, but you know, I think that when you think about what you should consume in terms of dairy, if you choose to consume dairy like me, you should consider your preferences, your satiety. You know, obviously a higher fat milk might make you feel full longer. Your total calorie intake, but your lipid profile, because all dairy fat is saturated fat, and saturated fat is not good for your lipid profile. So if you don't worry about heart disease, then choose whatever kind of dairy you want. Low-calorie sweeteners is something that a lot of people are concerned about. And you know, some years ago we had another presenter here at Women's Day who bashed low-calorie sweeteners. So low-calorie sweeteners have a role in both reducing calories and glycemic control, and that's based on science. So if you're a person with diabetes, then you actually don't need to be consuming sugar. But if you want something sweet, what are you going to have? Low-calorie sweetener. Here's the controversy. Some say it increases your caloric intake. So my presumption is if you're going to go to a fast food restaurant and have a big fat burger and a large fries, you might get a Diet Coke so that you don't have to have that many calories. So what's increasing your caloric intake? Is it the Diet Coke or is it the high-fat burger and fries? So I think you need to be a little bit realistic about this. I don't think anybody should drink diet drinks and consume overwhelmingly high amounts of low-calorie sweeteners. But you know, a lot of the thing is, you know, is it safe? Well, there is a list provided by the Food and Drug Administration. It's called the GRAS list, generally recognized as safe. So this, I've listed all the different low-calorie sweeteners. Here's aspartame, that's equal. This is Sunnet, sweet one, sweet and low, sweet, you know, all kinds of different names. Splenda, Nutame, I never heard of Nutame. But anyway, some other brand names. But this is the level of sweetness of all of these, and they're pretty sweet. But here is the acceptable daily intake, the maximum number of tabletop sweetener packets per day that you would have to consume. Now, I want to know who out there is consuming 75 packets of equal per day, or 23 packets of Splenda. You know, when I go with, it's funny, when I go out with my sisters, you know, and they get tea or coffee or whatever, they put in 3 or 4 packs of sweeteners in there, and I'm like, I can't even take but half of one. So, but so keep it all in context. 75 packs of equal is a lot of packs of equal. So there's a huge amount of negative hype, and that makes headlines around the world. So if you hear somebody say, "Oh, artificial sweeteners are terrible for you," then everybody's in the world is going to be, "Oh my God, I'm going to die." But there have been no negative findings or positive studies to support that media attention. So it's really critical to review the literature. Low-calorie sweeteners get a very long and lengthy process review by FDA, and most that are on the market have gone through extensive review before their approval. But in order to get on that GRAS list, they have to have gone through some level of approval. Ma'am? Stevia was on there. I thought it was on there. Stevia is, actually stevia is not on there, but I think stevia was newer, and stevia would be, it's perfect. It's like all of these. If you consume 100 packets, maybe that's not good. So there's not a lot of consumption data. We don't have lots. We're not going to put people on a study where we're going to give them 75 packets of. I don't think we get anybody agree to that. Actually, to be in a study where we'd put 75 packets, you have to consume 75 packets a day. So there's not a lot of consumption data on that. So the bottom line is that studies conducted since 2008 have raised no concerns with respect to exceeding the use of individual sweetener acceptable daily intakes among the general population globally. Health effects are inconclusive since we have no long-term consumption data, but what we know now is that within a reasonable intake, it is perfectly fine because it actually will help you to reduce your caloric intake, promote your weight loss or maintenance, and basically others. But there may be some other studies that show no effect, but there's so much detail that goes into these scientific studies that you don't know what the outcome is. For instance, there was a study that looked at cancer it was the Women's Health Initiative. And so they looked at cancer, and they found that a low-fat diet didn't work, but they were looking at heart disease. Some people were looking at heart disease, but the main outcome was cancer. So, you have to look at really what the main outcome is. And there's no large or long-term human studies to indicate that there's any link between low-calorie sweeteners and cancer. So bone broth, that was another question somebody asked last year. What about bone broth? So, that people think that broths made from meat bones can help soothe arthritis, boost your immune function, and smooth your skin. And that's a myth. What is it about bone broth? And actually someone was telling me there's a huge display of bone broth at Costco. And I've seen a huge display of bone broth at Sam's. So you can simmer bones in water with seasoning for a very long time, as long as 2 days. It has one good thing going for it. One thing good for it. It's a good source of protein. It contains maybe 6 to 12 grams a cup. I'll check the label. Always check the label for content of things like bone broth. There are some claims with some support. Chicken soup or bone broth may help clear your nasal passages. A 1978 study, that's a long time ago, found that sipping it increased the flow of mucus better than either hot or cold water. And chicken soup may reduce inflammation, but this really has not ever been confirmed in a controlled study. And you always hear chicken soup or bone broth is good for the soul, helps with the, I always give, when my son is sick, I give him chicken soup or chicken noodle soup so that makes him feel better. So, you know, I think that that's a good thing. But there are a lot of claims about bone broth that have no support. Bone broth does not relieve joint pain because arthritis is a result of collagen, and although bone broth contains collagen, dietary collagen isn't absorbed as it is and sent straight into your joints. It just doesn't happen. There's a claim that bone broth makes skin firmer and smoother. That's based on collagen, and dietary collagen isn't taken into your skin either. Bone broths don't improve digestion. Bone broth contains gelatin, claimed to be a digestive aid, but there is little evidence to support its effectiveness. And bone broths don't really strengthen bone. Just because a broth is derived from bone doesn't mean it will build bone or prevent osteoporosis. Even when you simmer it for 48 hours, 2 days, bones release very little calcium into the broth. So if you enjoy bone broth, have at it. I think it's too expensive. You know, it's not something that I think has a lot of science to back it up, and that's really the main thing I think that we need to look at. So you probably have many other questions, and so I have some time here. Question? Wait a minute. Let me address this question in the back. Collagen powder, you said? Well, I haven't studied collagen powder, but I would have to say that I don't know of any research studies that have looked at collagen powder. I know that there's a lot of studies about different things that athletes use, you know, to like protein powders and different types of powders that really don't have a whole lot of science to back them up either. So I would say that if they got a big display and they're marketing it and it costs a lot of money, I don't know that I would really therefore spend my time evaluating the effectiveness of it. And don't go to collagen.com. Go to collagen.org or government.org or something that is a little bit more believable in terms of providing sound science to back up things. Okay, in the front. An acid alkaline diet. Well, there's a lot of diets out there. You know, my feeling is if you want to try a lot of diets on the short term, there's not any science to back that up, but I'm good if you want to do it. But just be aware that whatever diet you choose and you do it on a short term, look at what you're eliminating from your diet and look at what you might be missing and look at how you're feeling. It cuts out dairy, and there's a lot of people that don't think they need dairy. I mean, I like dairy, but there are a lot of people that are lactose intolerant. There are a lot of people who just don't care for dairy. And so I would think that if you're going to have something that increases your calcium, that maybe that might be a good thing. Well, let me just say one other thing. I have some time, so I'm going to address all your questions. But one thing I was going to say is that when we did the DASH diet, we didn't even use calcium fortified orange juice. We actually use naturally occurring calcium from dairy. So anyway, down in the front. Almond milk. You know, the thing about it is that dairy has shown to be positive benefits for diabetes. So if you're going to choose almond milk, that's fine. I don't know that the calcium in almond milk is actually added calcium, because almonds, to my knowledge, don't have much calcium. And you know, the other thing that I have found with a lot of these nut milks is that their protein content is not as high as dairy. You have to look for certain ones that actually will give you at least 8 grams per 8 ounces. And that's fine. That's one thing that would be of a concern to me, because I think you want to make sure that you get an adequate amount of protein in your diet. Back there? Yeah, what about it? It's a medium chain triglyceride, caprylic. So I don't know that I would want to take anything in isolation. I really think that a lot of the supplements that people take, we did a study one time with some female soldiers, and one woman was taking 52 pills a day. You know, I'm a believer in whole food. I actually do take some supplements, but I take things that, you know, I know that I may be missing, like maybe I take a calcium tablet, I take a vitamin D tablet, I take a fish oil, and basically I'm looking for certain things that, you know, I would never take caprylic acid because I can't imagine what it would do for me. So that's the main thing that I'm concerned about. I'd have to look that one up, because I'm not as, I know what you're thinking about carrageenan, but I don't know that there's any data either way. So look for some science on carrageenan. Look for a not Women's Daily, or unless they're citing a valid study that shows this. Question? Any more questions? Okay, right here. I think I don't know if like you're thinking of bone broth. No, but I think that really to find a food that stops the progression of any disease is really a challenge, because you don't know what causes the disease to begin with. It's like for overweight and diabetes, you know, obviously total calories. But, you know, specific foods that have miraculous properties, I hadn't found any. I'm looking for them, though. There are a lot of anti-inflammatory. Your best anti-inflammatory are fruits and vegetables. And you know, like some, I believe vitamin D as well, so there's some concern there. Way in the back. Chlorophyll and constipation, that's a new one for me. Chlorophyll is coming from plants, so if you eat green plants, they should have a lot of chlorophyll, and you shouldn't be constipated if you're eating tons of green leafy vegetables. It's sort of interesting, because, you know, when you think of chlorophyll, you think of green. You think of green leafy vegetables, plants. Chlorophyll is not in animal stuff, it's in plants. And so the greener the plant, the higher the level of chlorophyll. So you eat a ton of kale and broccoli and Yeah, you might have some good, you might not have constipation at that point. Okay, over here, sorry. Well, there's some, we've done some work with turmeric, and turmeric, has some, I mean, it's not a be-all and end-all, but it may have some positive health benefits. Organic smoothies, I think a smoothie, yeah, and there's a lot of benefits too, because you're increasing your fruit and vegetable consumption because, if you pulverize it, it's still going to be beneficial. Right, and I do want to say that I think that it doesn't have to be organic. It can be just regular fruits and vegetables, because I will tell you that I think there's a lot of hype about organic that doesn't necessarily need to be hyped up, because for people who are in a limited income, I would like to see them consume fruits and vegetables, organic or not. Grapeseed oil? Grapeseed oil is canola oil. And well, I think that most oils, I think, a lot of coconut oil, palm kernel oil, those are the ones that, all the tropical oils, I don't think they're gonna be all saturated to some extent and not good for you. Very sad. Not good for you if you have a heart disease in your family, or you really need to look at your lipid profile. There's some concern about, I mean, the thing about it is that, these are generally polyunsaturated oils that I don't think that they're that inflammatory. I would have to say that coconut oil is, it's something you want to get rid of your saturated oils, and, so the polyunsaturated are better. I don't use a lot of oil in particular. I think if you go with peanut oil and olive oil, you'd be in good shape. I'm gonna let Dr. Santamont talk about that when he gives his talk next. So but there's lipoprotein delay and little b and all that, and I'm not as up to date with that, although my previous knowledge was better than my current knowledge. You have a question? No, I'm not familiar with that. I'll have to put those all on my list. When you fill out your evaluation, you put that on your list and say, I want to know about that for next time. Okay, last question in the back, because I think that Dr. Santamont is going to be up next. Sauerkraut for vitamin B? Vitamin D? There's not a lot of research that shows that I'm aware of that supports that. Okay, well, I guess I could take one or two more questions. calcium supplements. I think if you have a predisposition to kidney stones, there might be some concern, but as far as I know, there's not a valid body of research on that topic.
Is it a good idea to fast for 12 hours or more at night for that ketogenic factor?
Beats me. I think there's a lot of data supporting intermittent fasting, but I don't know about the ketogenic. The ketogenic diet just eat a lot of fat. Not necessarily, it's not something that I would be able to sustain on the long term.